What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 55 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Friday, February 21st, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malum. But before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the NBA as the New York Knicks are in action tonight. A 7 o'clock start in Cleveland as they take on the first place in the Eastern Conference, Cleveland Cavaliers. Let's go back to yesterday's game, though, as the Knicks defeated the Chicago Bulls for the first time this season. 2 losses so far this season to Chicago, 1 at home, 1 on the road, and they finally get the better of a Chicago Bulls team that came into the game 22-33 on the season, and the Knicks find a way to win in overtime. They did pull away in overtime, but then the Bulls mounted a comeback later on, and then the Knicks really are able to close it out. A couple of great defensive plays as the time is running down, and a 113-111 victory for New York, and they move to 37-18 on the season. This game, though, was all about 2 guys in Karl-Anthony Towns as well as Deuce McBride. Deuce McBride, I mean, talk about a guy who's coming in, has the pressure on him to step up in the absence of a guy like OG Anunoby, and he did just that. Did shoot 9 of 19 from the field, just under 50%, 5 of 12 from 3, led the Knicks in 3-pointers by 3 in that one. When you look at 5 to really 2 for a lot of the other guys in Brunson, Towns, and even Landry Shamet off the bench. And then you look at the rebounds and the assists as well. It had 6 rebounds, Deuce McBride did. So really stepping up, plus 3 steals, 3 blocks as well. How about stepping up on the defensive end? And even though does not have the great size like a guy like OG Anunoby, still can step up on the defensive end. What a performance by Deuce McBride coming into the starting lineup and playing 42 minutes against the Bulls last night. And when you look at Karl-Anthony Towns as well, 32 points, 18 rebounds in this one. Only shot 2 of 10 from 3, really struggled from long range, but had a guy like Deuce McBride really stepping up for him. And when you look at Towns, ends up getting 32 points, and just 2 of those were from the charity strike. So it was all work down low in the paint, and a lot of great fadeaway jumpers that he had, and really a clutch one in overtime that you really saw him get his groove and looked really, really good last night. So the Knicks finally get a win over Chicago. Probably one that you're a little bit worried about as a Knicks fan. If they did lose this game, how in the world are they going to head into 2 games against Cleveland and Boston that they're coming off a loss to Chicago, who, I mean, those teams would really truck Chicago anytime they would play them. So definitely a shaky situation in the end if they would have lost that game. But now it's even shakier in my mind as let's look at tonight's game. And in Cleveland, the Knicks are 8.5-point dogs. And ESPN, the matchup predictor, is only giving them a 23.2% chance to win this game against all odds, going to Cleveland at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, where the Cavs have only lost 4 games on the season. So when you look at that, like, it's going to be real, real tough. And they have this game on a back-to-back. They go to overtime yesterday, then have to jump on a flight right away to Cleveland. Something that the Knicks are going to have to figure out. But I mentioned total sitting at 241.5, and Cleveland as 8.5-point favorites. What a high spread it is. And when you look at the overtime game, plus the fact that Cleveland have had the Knicks number this year, they won that 1 game earlier in the season. I think the Knicks really look like they're struggling against those top teams in the NBA, and Vegas is really seeing that, and that's really the main reason for the high spread. But tune in later, 7 o'clock, as the Knicks take on the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second game of a back-to-back. Tune in later. Let's move things to baseball, and in the MLB, the New York Yankees made some news as on Thursday they came to an agreement with manager Aaron Boone on a 2-year contract extension that will run through the 2027 season. In the end, I think this is a good move for the New York Yankees. I know a lot of people are on the back of Aaron Boone, and they just don't want to see him as the Yankee manager anymore, especially Yankee fans. I understand the belief that he's not a strong in-game manager. However, a lot of the time when he is an in-game manager, I don't feel like he's really making those true decisions. I think when it comes to certain decisions out of the bullpen, yes, he's going with a guy for certain spots, but it's all based on analytics, number one. And number two, when you look at something like the lineup and giving guys an extra chance, guys like DJ LeMahieu that people have been really angry about in the last couple of years, guys like Gleyber Torres still getting second chances here and there. I think it also comes down to Brian Cashman. I think that's part of Brian Cashman's deal, even though there's certain analytics and certain things that will point to a different way. Brian Cashman is also coming to an agreement with Aaron Boone each day on what the lineup's going to look like, how the lineup's going to look based on those analytics. I think it all comes down to that. It's really frustrating for a lot of Yankee fans to obviously see season after season after season with Aaron Boone as the manager and has been the manager since 2018. But I think this comes down to, well, who else is going to come in as the manager? When you look at Brian Cashman and what he's looking to do with this Yankee roster, he's going to Aaron Boone and saying, this is kind of what I want. And obviously, when the boss says it, it's going to come down to that. I think in the end, though, if they replace a guy like Aaron Boone with somebody that's maybe a bit hard-nosed and will go after his players, one, that's not something that Brian Cashman wants, so that's not going to be a really good scenario for him. And in the end, I don't know if that's going to get the best out of these players. I mean, we're talking about a team that made it to the World Series last year with the same type of motivation that Aaron Boone's been giving them year after year after year. I think it just comes down to talent, and the Yankees have the talent. Aaron Boone's, yes, going to make some decisions here and there that people will get frustrated about. But I think overall, a manager that gets a team to a World Series and has the players having his back is a better manager than a manager who's going to throw his guys under the bus and really stir up the clubhouse. It's just not going to work out. And I think this is a smart move by the Yankees, smart move to bring back Aaron Boone for another couple of seasons. We're talking about a team that made it to the World Series last year, and it doesn't look like many teams in the American League really got so much better than they did last year. I think the Yankees actually got better in terms of really fielding everywhere and all throughout the lineup and really having some depth in the lineup rather than really relying on those top-heavy guys at the top of the lineup, your Juan Soto's, your Aaron Judge of the world, and then you had Gleyber Torres, who was red hot. I really think they spreaded things out, and they finally get a first baseman that probably could hit, and Paul Goldschmidt. Will end up seeing if that's true, and they get Cody Bellinger, another power guy who really makes strong contact and could get on base, a very strong base runner, as well as a great fielder. So I think they are on the right track right now to make it back to the World Series once again, and they did it with Aaron Boone last year. Who says they can't do it again? So I'm all on board with Aaron Boone coming back, but he has signed a 2-year contract extension that will run through 2027 to stay with the New York Yankees. But let's finish things off today with a college basketball update, as let's move to Friday's games and tonight's games. When you look at just the one big one in my mind, it's Michigan State, number 14 in the country, taking on their rival number 12, Michigan. This one at the Chrysler Center in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Michigan hosting Michigan State is always a big game, but Michigan comes into this one as 2.5-point favorites, total sitting at 150.5. And when you look at these two teams, I mean, it's just a great rivalry overall, one of the best in the Big Ten. So when you look at this game, I think Michigan probably comes in with the edge, as they have a good win over Purdue on their home floor. It's really tough to go on the road in college basketball, but this Michigan State team is an absolute animal. I think when you look at what State has been able to do in the last couple of weeks, I know they lost to Indiana, but they knocked off Purdue at home earlier this week, and then they also knock off Illinois. I know Illinois not ranked, but a road game at Illinois, and they cruise through it in the end. I think those two wins are massive, and heading into a game like this against your top rival, I do think State keeps this one close. Probably Michigan winning it in the end, and the Wolverines have been really strong so far this season that I think, yeah, all right, on their home floor, they continue to roll. They are 20-5 on the year, and Michigan State's 21-5, but the record in Big Ten play is obviously the edge for Michigan, 12-2 versus 12-3 for Michigan State. So this is a great game tonight, and make sure you tune into this one, 8 o'clock tonight, as Michigan hosts their rival Michigan State in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So when you look at now Saturday's games, we have some great games, and looking at the starter for tomorrow's slate, 12 o'clock, you got number 6 Tennessee going on the road to College Station to take on number 7 Texas A&M. And A&M coming off a bad loss on the road where they got absolutely trucked, it looked like, in the end. And yes, it's not classified as a bad loss because Mississippi State down in Starksville is a very solid place to play and a very tough place to play, excuse me. But when you look at Texas A&M overall, they got to rack up some wins. They are 7th in the country. They're looking for a bounce back here, and no better way than to knock off a top 10 team in the country. So this is going to be a very tough game for the Tennessee Volunteers as they come into this one, 21-5 on the year and 8-5 in SEC play. A&M 20-6 on the year and 9-4 in SEC play. So we'll see what happens, but this one should be a great game as A&M hosts Tennessee in College Station. Just a couple more games to get to, and the big one in my mind, 2 o'clock tomorrow, as number 8 Iowa State goes on the road to take on number 5 Houston at the Fertitta Center down in Houston, Texas. And Iowa State 21-5 on the year, 11-4 in Big 12 play. Then you look at Houston 22-4 on the year and 14-1 in Big 12 play. Sole possession of first place in the Big 12 Conference, and Houston continues to roll. I don't know how I could pick against Houston in this one. They're at home. I know Iowa State's going to give them a good run, but Houston is an animal right now. And although Iowa State has had the number of Houston in recent history and continue to roll past them, especially last year in the Big 12 championship game down in Kansas City, they were absolutely phenomenal in the end. Iowa State was last year, but I don't think going on the road to the Fertitta Center, I can really roll with the Cyclones in this one. So I will take the Cougars. And then the final couple of games for tomorrow's slate, we got at 6 o'clock, a blue blood versus a new blood. You got number 17 Kentucky, 18-8 on the year, 7-6 in SEC play. Sort of struggling right now in SEC play, but finding ways to pick up wins. They end up grabbing a huge win against Vandy the other night, a 21-point victory, excuse me. They win it at Rupp Arena, and now they have to go on the road to take on number 4 Alabama, who's 21-5 on the year, 10-3 in SEC play. And Bama, for the first time this season, coming off of a pair of losses. They lost last weekend to Auburn, number 1 Auburn, and a 94-85 loss there. And then they go on the road this week and just let up so many points. And that's one of the problems with Bama, the defensive side. They are just not strong right now. 110-98, Missouri ends up beating Alabama at Mizzou Arena in Columbia, Missouri. I think in the end, just the defense, it has to be better. I know that Alabama wants to play fast pace and they could put up more points than really anybody. But in games like that, you just got to figure out something on the defensive side. There's no defense at all. Credit to Missouri. They made some tough shots, but I don't think the effort was there on the defensive side from Bama, and it needs to be better if they're going to win in March. You're not going to win in March when you're not playing strong defense. It's just not the key. So I think they need a lot of work there. And then the final game, a game at Madison Square Garden. How about it? Number 3 Duke taking on Illinois. And this one is an interesting out-of-conference game that takes place 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Number 3 Duke and Illinois going to battle at MSG. You probably pick Duke to win this one, but it sets the preview for the next day on Sunday when UConn goes to the Garden to take on number 10 St. John's. What a game it's going to be. UConn 18-8 and St. John's 23-4. St. John's is 14-2 in the Big East Conference, 2 games up in first place in the Big East, and UConn at 10-5 in the Big East on the year. But those 2 games, you probably pick Duke to win the first one on Saturday and then the second one at MSG on Sunday. Go Johnnies as they host UConn, and they've beaten UConn so far this season. You're looking for them to do so again, although UConn will have a lot of fans there. It'll be packed at MSG, plus the fact that UConn has won a couple of real strong games, real tough games on the road against Big East opponents. So we'll see what happens, but make sure you tune in to a massive slate of college basketball this weekend. But that'll do it for episode 55 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malum, and thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Monday.